camera deep under this oil rig, and they spotted this thing with these insane long appendages.
This diver went 180 feet below Antarctica's frozen surface and came back up early for a reason no one expected. Antarctica is one of the most extreme places on Earth, and deep-sea diving there is not done lightly. Every dive is planned down to the smallest detail, and every diver knows the risks before entering the water. But during one routine shift beneath the ice, a diver made a decision that surprised even the team waiting above. Make sure to follow along because what comes next changes how this dive is usually understood. The dangerous profession. Deep-sea diving is a job that sounds thrilling until the reality sets in. Divers descend into darkness wearing heavy equipment, knowing a single failure can turn fatal in seconds. While most understand the risks before starting, facing those dangers firsthand is very different. Offshore work involves inspecting pipelines, repairing equipment, and maintaining critical structures at depths beyond 100 feet, where strict time limits and decompression rules leave no room for mistakes. The high pay reflects the extreme risk. Divers endure freezing water, strong currents, poor visibility, and constant pressure on both body and mind. Over time, experience builds confidence and control, helping them manage fear and trust their training. But even seasoned professionals can face moments that break that confidence entirely. When that line is crossed, some choose to leave the profession for good. Understanding the depth. When we talk about diving to 180 feet, we need to understand what that actually means in practical terms. At that depth, the water pressure is roughly 6 times what you experience at the surface. Every breath requires significantly more air from your tank because the air is compressed. Your body is under immense physical stress, and your mind has to work harder to process information and make decisions. Recreational diving usually maxes out around 130 feet, and even that's considered advanced diving that requires special certification. Going beyond that puts you into technical diving territory, where the risks multiply rapidly. At 180 feet, you're approaching depths where nitrogen narcosis becomes a serious concern for most divers. This condition affects your judgment and can make you feel disoriented or confused. The deeper you go, the less time you can spend at that depth before you accumulate a dangerous amount of nitrogen in your tissues. At 180 feet, your bottom time might be limited to just 10 or 15 minutes before you need to start ascending. And when you do ascend, you can't just swim straight to the surface. You have to make decompression stops at specific depths to allow the nitrogen to slowly leave your system. If you skip those decompression stops or rush through them, you risk decompression sickness, commonly known as the bends. This condition can cause excruciating pain, paralysis, and even death if not treated immediately. The nearest recompression chamber might be hours away, and in some locations, medical evacuation could take even longer. These aren't theoretical risks. They're real dangers that every deep diver faces on every single dive. Cold water diving adds another layer of difficulty to deep diving. In many offshore locations, water temperatures can drop to levels that would cause hypothermia in an unprotected person within minutes. Divers wear thick dry suits with thermal undergarments, but the cold still finds ways to penetrate. Your face is exposed, your hands get numb even with gloves, and the longer you stay in the water, the more the cold drains your energy. When you combine extreme cold with the physical demands of working at depth, your body burns through energy at an alarming rate. You're breathing harder, your heart is working harder, and you're fighting against the resistance of the water with every movement. Tasks that would be simple on land become exhausting underwater. Even experienced divers can find themselves completely drained after a deep, cold water dive. Equipment adds to the physical burden. A fully equipped commercial diver can be wearing over 200 pounds of gear, including the dry suit, weight belt, air tanks, tools, and safety equipment. Moving with all that weight in cold water, while fighting current and trying to complete precise work, requires serious physical strength and stamina. It's not just about being comfortable in the water, it's about being able to function effectively under extreme physical stress. The mental strain is just as challenging as the physical demands. You have to constantly monitor your air supply, watch your depth, track your time, and stay aware of your surroundings while also focusing on whatever work you're supposed to be doing. If visibility is poor, which it often is at deeper depths,
you're working essentially blind, relying on touch and your mental map of the work area. This level of multitasking under pressure exhausts your mind just as much as the work exhausts your body. Commercial diving operations follow strict safety protocols, and one of the most important is the buddy system. Divers typically work in pairs, with each person watching out for the other. If one diver encounters a problem, the other is there to help. This system has saved countless lives over the years, but it only works if both divers are actually in the water together. Sometimes circumstances force changes to standard procedures. A dive partner might call in sick, equipment might fail, or scheduling issues might create situations where safety protocols get bent or broken. When this happens, management faces a difficult choice. Do they postpone the dive and potentially lose money? Or do they allow a solo dive with modified safety measures? The pressure to keep operations running often wins out over caution. Solo diving at extreme depths is significantly more dangerous than paired diving. If something goes wrong when you're alone, there's no immediate help available. You have to solve the problem yourself, while managing your air supply, controlling your buoyancy, and dealing with whatever crisis emerged. Even with surface support monitoring your vital signs and communication, the people topside can't physically help you if you're in trouble, 180 feet down. The psychological aspect of solo diving shouldn't be underestimated either. Knowing you're completely alone in a hostile environment changes how you perceive threats. Every strange sound, every unexpected sensation, every moment of equipment trouble feels more dangerous when you know there's nobody nearby who can assist you. That isolation can wear on your mental state, especially during longer dives in poor visibility, when things go silent. Experienced divers will tell you that one of the most unsettling experiences underwater is sudden silence. The ocean is normally full of sounds. You hear the clicking of shrimp, the hum of boat engines in the distance, the movement of water around structures, and the ambient noise of marine life. These sounds create a background that divers become accustomed to. When those sounds suddenly stop, it usually means something has changed. In nature, silence often signals the presence of a predator. Fish scatter, smaller creatures hide, and everything goes quiet. Divers who've encountered sharks often report that the reef goes silent right before the shark appears. This isn't superstition. It's a real phenomenon that happens because prey animals react to the presence of large predators by hiding and staying still. The silence is a warning sign. But not all silence comes from predators. Sometimes equipment malfunctions create unexpected quiet. Communication systems can fail, cutting off the reassuring sound of surface support checking in regularly. When your radio goes dead while you're deep underwater, the isolation becomes much more pronounced. You're cut off from the outside world, alone with just the sound of your own breathing inside your diving helmet. The psychological impact of unexpected silence underwater can be profound. Your brain knows something isn't right. Your instincts start screaming at you to get out of the water, even if you can't identify a specific threat. Fighting against those instincts takes mental discipline, but sometimes those instincts are correct. Sometimes the silence really does mean danger is present, and ignoring that warning can have serious consequences. Nitrogen narcosis is one of the most unpredictable dangers of deep diving. As you descend, nitrogen dissolves into your bloodstream and tissues. At greater depths, this nitrogen starts affecting your brain function in ways similar to alcohol intoxication or drug use. Divers call it getting narked, and the effects vary from person to person and from dive to dive. At 100 feet, some divers start feeling mild effects, a sense of euphoria, slight confusion, or mild impairment of judgment. By 130 feet, most people experience noticeable symptoms. At 180 feet, nitrogen narcosis can seriously impair your ability to think clearly and make good decisions. Some divers describe it as feeling drunk, while others report more severe disorientation and hallucinations. The dangerous part of narcosis is that you often don't realize how impaired you are. Just like a drunk person who insists they're fine to drive, a narked diver might believe they're thinking clearly when they're actually making terrible decisions. You might forget to check your air gauge, ignore your decompression limits, or fail to recognize equipment problems. Your reaction time slows down, and your ability to solve problems deteriorates. What makes narcosis even more unpredictable is that it affects people differently on different dives. You might handle 150 feet well on one dive and become seriously impaired at the same depth the next week. Factors like fatigue, stress, cold, and even your emotional state can influence how severely narcosis hits you. There's no reliable way to predict how you'll react at depth, which makes every deep dive a gamble. The breaking point. Every diver has a breaking point, a moment where the accumulated stress, fear, and danger become too much to handle. For some people, this happens after a close call with equipment failure. For others, it comes after witnessing an accident or losing a colleague. Sometimes it's a gradual buildup of stress over many dives until one particular moment triggers a complete psychological break. The decision to quit diving mid-shift, especially at depth during an important job, isn't made lightly. It represents a fundamental loss of confidence in your ability to handle the situation safely. Something happens that makes you realize you can't continue, that finishing the job isn't worth the risk to your life. This realization often comes suddenly, triggered by a specific event or a combination of factors that finally overwhelm your defenses. Professional divers are trained to push through fear and complete their jobs even when conditions are difficult. They develop mental toughness and learn to compartmentalize their fears. But when something breaks through those mental defenses, when the fear becomes too strong to ignore, even the most experienced professionals can reach their limit. There's no shame in recognizing when you've hit that point, even though it might feel like failure. The aftermath of reaching your breaking point can be complicated. Some divers take time off, work through the psychological trauma, and eventually return to diving. Others walk away permanently, unable or unwilling to face the fears that overwhelmed them. The career they built over years can end in a single moment of recognition that they can no longer do the job safely. Commercial diving equipment is designed with multiple redundancies and safety features, but nothing is completely foolproof. Regulators can freeze in cold water and free flow, dumping your air supply. Dry suit valves can stick, causing uncontrolled buoyancy. Dive computers can malfunction. Communication systems can fail. Any of these problems can escalate into life-threatening situations when you're at depth. The deeper you dive, the less margin for error you have when equipment fails. At 50 feet, if your regulator starts acting up, you can probably make a controlled emergency ascent without serious problems. At 180 feet, the same equipment failure becomes much more dangerous. You have decompression obligations to consider, and rushing to the surface can kill you just as surely as running out of air.
Cold water is particularly hard on equipment. O-rings become brittle, moving parts can freeze, and battery life decreases. Even equipment that's been properly maintained and checked before the dive can develop problems once exposed to extreme cold and pressure. Experienced divers know to watch for warning signs, but sometimes failures happen without warning, creating emergencies that require immediate response. When equipment fails at depth in cold water, you're dealing with multiple problems simultaneously. You're fighting the cold, managing dwindling air supply, dealing with impaired judgment from narcosis, and trying to solve the technical problem with the equipment. All of this happens while you're alone or with minimal support, possibly in poor visibility. These situations test every aspect of your training and experience. The mental health aspects of commercial diving don't get discussed as much as the physical dangers, but they're equally important. Spending extended periods in hostile, isolated environments takes a psychological toll. The constant awareness of danger, the stress of maintaining perfect performance under pressure, and the isolation from normal life all contribute to mental fatigue. Working on remote oil rigs adds to the psychological burden. You're away from family and friends for weeks or months at a time, living in cramped quarters, working long shifts, and dealing with the monotony of rig life between dives. The isolation and confinement can lead to depression, anxiety, and other mental health issues that don't always get adequate attention or treatment. Some divers develop what psychologists call anticipatory anxiety. Before each dive, they start experiencing intense fear and dread, even if nothing specific has gone wrong recently. This anxiety can build over time until it becomes debilitating. The thought of going back in the water triggers panic attacks or severe stress responses. When this happens, continuing to dive becomes psychologically impossible. Post-traumatic stress from diving accidents or near misses is more common than many people realize. Witnessing a colleague's death, experiencing a serious equipment failure, or having a close call with injury can leave lasting psychological scars. Some divers develop nightmares, flashbacks, or persistent anxiety related to their experiences. These symptoms can end careers just as effectively as physical injuries. Decompression obligations. One of the most challenging aspects of deep diving is managing decompression requirements. When you dive to 180 feet, your body absorbs significant amounts of nitrogen. To safely return to the surface, you must make multiple decompression stops at specific depths, allowing that nitrogen to slowly leave your system. These stops can last many minutes or even hours, depending on how deep you went and how long you stayed there. Hanging motionless in cold water during decompression stops is miserable. You're cold, you're tired, you want to get out of the water, but you have to stay at depth and wait. The psychological challenge of forcing yourself to remain calm and patient when every instinct is screaming at you to surface can be enormous. You have to trust your training and your dive tables, even when your body and mind are begging you to break protocol. During these decompression stops, you're vulnerable. You can't move quickly if problems develop. You're burning through your remaining air supply while doing nothing but waiting. If currents are strong, you have to work constantly just to maintain your position. In poor visibility, you might not even be able to see the surface or any reference points, adding to the sense of isolation and vulnerability. The consequences of skipping decompression stops are severe. Decompression sickness can cause joint pain, paralysis, loss of consciousness, and death. Even mild cases require immediate treatment in a recompression chamber, and severe cases can cause permanent damage. Every diver knows these risks, but when you're cold, scared, and running low on air, the temptation to cut corners becomes stronger. Deciding to abort a dive isn't always straightforward. There are professional pressures to complete the job, financial considerations, and personal pride at stake. Divers don't want to be seen as weak or unable to handle difficult conditions. They don't want to let down their team or create problems for the operation. These pressures can push people to continue diving when they should stop. But there comes a point where continuing becomes more dangerous than aborting. Maybe your air supply is lower than it should be. Maybe equipment is malfunctioning in ways you can't fix underwater. Maybe nitrogen narcosis is affecting you more severely than usual. Maybe you're just feeling wrong in ways you can't fully articulate, but your instincts are telling you to.
Get out of the water immediately.
Making the decision to abort requires overcoming all those pressures and trusting your judgment, even when it might be impaired. It requires the courage to admit you can't safely complete the job.
For many divers, especially those with strong professional pride, this admission feels like failure. But experienced safety officers will tell you that aborting a dangerous dive is the right decision, even if it's difficult to make. The immediate aftermath of aborting a dive can be stressful. You have to explain to supervisors why you surfaced early. You might face questions about your fitness to continue working. If the job was critical, there might be financial consequences or angry reactions from management. But all of that is better than dying underwater or becoming permanently injured because you pushed past your limits. Life after the incident. For divers who experience a serious incident or reach their breaking point underwater, life afterwards often changes dramatically. Some people immediately resign and never dive again. Others take extended leave to process what happened and decide whether they can return to the profession. The psychological recovery can take months or years, and not everyone fully recovers. Many former divers struggle with the loss of their professional identity. Diving might have been their career for years or decades. They built expertise, developed a reputation, and derived meaning from doing difficult work well. Walking away from that leaves a void that's hard to fill. Some transition to related work on the surface, using their knowledge without having to dive. Others change careers completely. The financial impact can be significant. Commercial diving pays well, and finding another job with similar income isn't always possible, especially if the diver has limited education or experience outside the diving industry. This financial pressure adds to the stress of dealing with the psychological aftermath of whatever incident caused them to quit. Friends and family might not understand what the diver experienced or why they can't just get over it and go back to work. People who haven't experienced the unique stresses of deep commercial diving often underestimate how traumatic the work can be. This lack of understanding can create relationship problems and increase the diver's sense of isolation. Deep-sea diving at extreme depths pushes humans to their limits. Crushing pressure, freezing water, nitrogen narcosis, failing gear, and mental stress can overwhelm even veterans. Quitting at 180 feet is choosing life over pride. The ocean ignores training and determination. Respecting its danger is what keeps divers alive and careers long under unforgiving, silent, polar depths below. What would you do if you were at 180 feet and everything started going wrong? Share your thoughts in the comments.